This regular meeting is called to order. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Volleson, please call the roll.
Mr. Acom. Here. Mrs. Schneider.
Here.
Mrs. Click.
Here.
Mrs. Mahalis.
Here.
And Mr. Cebulski.
Here.
All right, we begin this evening with special recognitions. Tonight, we are recognizing two students from Aurora High School as Rotary Students of the Month. They are Avery Qualters and Ryan Arnold. May I have a motion for approval, please?
Move.
Second?
Mr. Volleson, please call the roll.
Mrs. Click.
Yes.
Mr. Cebulski.
Yes.
Mrs. Mahalis.
Yes.
Mr. Acom.
Yes.
Mrs. Schneider.
Yes.
All right, so would Avery and Rylan please come up and get your certificates, and then we'll have you go to the podium. And Mr. Hayes, would you please introduce the students?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Mahalis and the rest of the Board of Education. It's my pleasure tonight to recognize both Avery and Rylan. We'll start tonight by recognizing Avery Qualters. I'll share with you a few of the sentiments expressed by her teachers as part of the nomination process. So Mrs. Lindley said, "It has been a pleasure to be Avery's teacher for both her sophomore and senior years. She radiates kindness through her smile that she shines on everyone. She is inclusive and welcoming to her peers and helps others feel seen and heard. Avery's work ethic is outstanding, and she always strives to do her best work, whether it's on an English analysis, the softball field, or volunteering in the community. She is an important member of our AP Lit family." Mrs. Watt, AP Environmental Science teacher, said, "Avery Qualters is not only an exceptional student with remarkable academic abilities, but she is also an extraordinary person. She possesses a deep empathy for those around her, making her a true friend to everyone. Whether it's celebrating achievements or offering a shoulder to cry on, Avery is always there to support her peers. As an innovative leader, both in and out of the classroom, she inspires those around her with her kindness and vision. Avery, at her core, makes me aspire to be a better human." And finally, Mr. Knapp, social studies teacher, said, "Avery is a fantastic student and person. Academically, she always gives her best, and her work ethic is evident in everything she does. And it's one of those things that sets her apart from her peers. Even more so, she is someone who puts others before herself, and she treats everyone with kindness. She supports her friends and always brings a great attitude to every situation. Definitely one of the best that Aurora has to offer." Ladies and gentlemen, Avery Qualters.
Good evening, everyone. Before I begin, I would like to thank my wonderful parents, Don and Lynn Qualters, for instilling in me the essential values that have guided me here today. With that, I would like to thank my teachers and the high school administration for nurturing those values and encouraging me to grow as a learner as well as a person. And of course, thank you to the Rotary Club and its members, as well as the Board of Education, for recognizing and appreciating these values. Ever since a young age, I've thrived on connection with others. I even failed Safety Town in kindergarten because I went right up to the fake stranger we were supposed to avoid and introduced myself. And I know what you're thinking, I didn't know you could fail Safety Town either. I have carried the value of connection throughout my childhood. Connection is a key component in my desire to serve the community. I am a vice president of National Honor Society, vice president of Stop the Hate Club, enrolled in service learning class as well as Interact Club, and I do all of this while maintaining a high GPA and a starting spot as a center fielder for the Aurora softball team. I'm going to be honest, it is tiring sometimes. However, the rewarding feeling making connections and serving others fills me with is more than enough. There truly is something about putting a smile on others' faces. I enjoy this so much that I even work at Fantasy Delight in Aurora just so I can make even one little kid's day. And the getting free ice cream is a sweet bonus. I try to bring the importance of connection into the classroom as well. My favorite class at AHS was AP Psychology with Mrs. Durda. The other day, I walked into her classroom, wrote "You are loved" on a sticky note, and stuck it on her desk. It was a simple gesture that I hoped would brighten her day. After graduation, I plan to attend the University of Kentucky and major in nursing. There really is no other profession I picture for myself because of how deeply I care for helping others. Eventually, I hope to specialize in the Neonatal Intensive Care Unit, or the NICU, in order to pair my passion for helping others with my love for children. If this career leaves me with enough time, my other dream is to open my own bakery, so let me know everyone's favorite cupcake flavor after this. This award is such an honor because I know how much my values align with Rotary Club, and I like to believe I live by the term of which Rotary Club emphasizes service above self. As I leave the greenhouse, I hope to leave a positive impact on the building as well as an impression on the students who will come after me. I hope to encourage them to better themselves, better this school district, and leave their own impact on this community. Thank you.
All right, next up we have Mr. Rylan Arnold, and again, I'll share a few sentiments from some of his teachers. Beginning with math teacher, Mrs. Duncan. She said, "Rylan is a young man of true character. He has a quiet confidence about him, which is very admirable. He is a gracious leader, not pushy or showy with what he knows, but rather embraces others and brings them along to understand the material. Rylan was always at the top of the class and took advantage of ways to deeply understand the AP pre-calculus topics. Rylan is a scholar in every sense of the word." Mrs. Watt, environmental science teacher, said, "Rylan brings a vibrant energy to the classroom, always greeting everyone with a warm smile. He stands out as a remarkable leader, effortlessly guiding group discussions and ensuring that his peers grasp the material. His positive attitude and supportive nature make him an invaluable asset to our learning environment. We are so happy to have Rylan in APES, AP Environmental Science, this year." And finally, give you a little bit of a blurb from Mr. Rubin, which was unique. I had to condense it because it was pretty long. He said, "Rylan is an outstanding student. He actually brings notes and sources to our Socratic exercises. Most impressive to me is his exemplary character. He is modest, polite, and respectful to teachers and students alike. It is never about him. It is always about the work. He has a genuine interest in government and a desire to improve our government." Mr. Rubin went on to say, "Coach Stefanski said of Nick Chubb, 'He isn't low maintenance, he's no maintenance.' And I feel the exact same way about Rylan Arnold. He is one of Aurora's best." Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Rylan.
Good evening. My name is Rylan Arnold, and I am a senior at Aurora High School. First of all, I'd like to thank the Aurora Board of Education and the Rotary Club for this honor. Now, when Mr. Hayes comes and he asks to speak to you in private, you can't help but feel a little bit of panic and think, oh no. But on this particular occasion, when Mr. Hayes came and contacted me in my first period class, I was surprised, humbled, and honored to learn that I had been chosen to receive the Rotary Club Student of the Month Award. Now, admittedly, I didn't know much about the Rotary Club, so I had to look into it a little bit and found that they are an organization that is dedicated to the betterment of our community, both locally and abroad. And I can say that my family and I try to live that out daily, although admittedly on a bit of a smaller scale with the people that we know. We have a bunch of elderly neighbors in our neighborhood, and my brother and I try to go around and do their yard work, bring them home-cooked meals, and even just walk their dog if they haven't been able to do that themselves. And we actually sponsor a child, too, of Cambodia, and we financially provide for his education. It's such a joy to be able to give him letters and receive them back and get a bit of an insight into what's going on in his world. Furthermore, I participate in multiple CVS, Christian Bible camps for kids during the summer, and I have volunteered at the Truth for Life organization as well. Now, I feel like I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the impact my family has had on getting me to where I am today. Most importantly, my brother, my best friend, he is a sophomore in Aurora High School. He, too, has received this award his 8th grade year. We serve to mutually push each other and motivate each other in order to operate at the highest possible caliber that each of us can, while keeping each other on the straight and narrow through life's many storms. I'm incredibly blessed to have him and my parents in my life, and as Luke 12:48 says, "To whom much is given and much will be required." In other words, we are held responsible for what we have, and if we are blessed with talents, wealth, knowledge, time, or a great family, it's expected that we benefit others. In school, I participate in STARS, standing for Students Taking an Active Role in Society, where it's at a big club that myself and my peers gather about twice a month to discuss and debate topics that are relevant to our society and our government. So it should come as no surprise that my favorite topic in school is government, and I did have a great time in Mr. Rubin's AP Government class last year. And I'm taking the sequel to that this year, AP Comparative Government, where it really does give you a better insight onto how blessed we are to live where we do in America. Now, I'm looking on to my future. Once I graduate Aurora High School, hopefully, I will be going to study computer science and business, two sectors which I hope are going to be relatively safe from the intrusion of AI. And I'm going to be studying either Grove City College in Pennsylvania or Kent State in our backyard. So I want to thank everybody again for this honor, and I wish everybody a good evening.
Thank you, students. I'm sure that you both have very positive impacts on the high school, and we wish you the best as you finish your career here and then move on to your future plans. Thank you. And for the families, if you would like to leave, you're welcome to do so at any time rather than sit here. Okay, next we will move on to the approval of minutes from the special meeting of August 5th and the regular meeting of August 26th. May I have a motion for approval?
Moved. Second.
Are there any edits or additions to those minutes? All right, Mr. Volleson, please call the roll.
Mr. Cebulski?
Yes.
Mrs. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Akam?
Yes.
Mrs. Click?
Yes.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes. Minutes are approved as written. All right, next, I think we're moving on to Dr. Messerich.
Yes. We have flipped the order this evening. So as I talked about previously, usually in August and September, I give the board an update on the outside audits, the standardized testing. So last month in August was advanced placement, and so this month is EOCs or OSTs, basically the Ohio State tests. So I'm going to take a few minutes just to summarize some findings and some of the results from that. Try to be as brief as possible because I do need to pass it over to Mr. Roberto, who then is going to talk about the report card, which I know you've heard about, the good news regarding the report card, so I'll let him talk about that. That was released September 13th, so just a couple weeks ago. And then we will both pass it on to Mr. Hayes, and Mr. Hayes is going to be the first principal who will be updating the board on his goals. And so a lot of it is tied directly into what Mr. Roberto and I are going to talk about, but there'll also be some different information provided as well. And I know you have packets and reports from all of us you've been able to see in advance. So without further ado, I'll jump into mine. I do have some slides up there as well. So what I try to do for the board in your packet and then also up here is really just give you the last few years of data, see where we are in our state tests at Layton, Harmon, and the high school. And a couple years ago we were talking about sort of recovering from the pandemic. And I'm going to show you a little dashboard in a few slides here. But really, I'm not really talking about that now. It's more about sort of what range are we scoring at in terms of each of the grade levels and subject areas. Have we shown growth the last few years? Did we get a nice bump up maybe a couple years ago and maybe it was a significant gain and we're sort of normalized now, but really we just want to see high levels of achievement. We sort of want to see stability sort of within an appropriate range for each subject and testing area. So if you see Layton up there, obviously, I would just describe these as pretty stable. Jump up a couple years ago and you can see some have ebbed and flowed a little bit up and down. Some areas, obviously, we want to spend a little bit more time on sort of reflecting. Some areas we've really seen some nice growth. And you can see that, from the data points up there. Harmon, similar, I would say, with Harmon, and that we're seeing high levels of, achievement and stability. Did want to point out, it's nice to see the, 7th and 8th grade math, seeing some nice bumps there and continuing to trend up, and that's something that, we're paying close attention to. And then moving on to the high school, same thing, very solid levels of achievement, like I said, within those ranges. Sometimes you might see one year that's up quite a bit and then, normalize the next year, and you'll see that with some of these trends. One thing I did want to mention is you'll see a rather significant jump in American government. And sometimes, it takes a little bit of time in terms of changes that you've made, and sometimes you just take advantage of an opportunity in terms of doing some pretty significant shifts. And so that's, when you see a number like that, it's obviously very positive, but not typical to see, that much growth in one year. But overall, things are looking pretty good and confirming our approach, like we like to talk about, in line with the competencies and the strategic vision, and obviously in line with the state standards. One thing that I did want to show the board is this. There's something that the state keeps, ODEW keeps, it's called the Recovery Dashboard. And there's all kinds of data metrics on there. And from the state's perspective, what they're really looking at is recovery from the pandemic. So that you can see there's 2019 and then pandemic and coming out of the pandemic. So the reason I really wanted to show this image here is that you can really see the last couple of years. So that would be gray, those gray and black bands that are kind of trending up. So the black band is advanced, 36.2% advanced, and 26.5% accomplished, and that's 2024. And then gray was 2023. And so basically you can see the trend there. It's trending upwards. And actually those last 2 years of state data, we've had some of the highest accomplished and advanced percentages that we've had in recent history since coming out of the pandemic. So I'd love to see that. That's awesome. I guess if I could point out a growth area, what I would like to see in general is maybe some of our struggling learners who are at the basic level. I'd like to see essentially sort of a little bump up to the right. So, a little bit higher or a few percentage of those basic students moving into the proficient while maintaining that accomplished and advanced. And obviously we spend a lot of time on that with MTSS and interventions and some of the things we've talked about before. So I would say that's probably one of the bigger takeaways that I wanted to share this evening. So in general, I just listed a few trends here. Overall, the trend is higher. Our performance index is higher and stable, which is what we want to see. Comparative data trends. So I used to try to give you an idea of how we were scoring comparatively on each one of the tests. That has become, sort of untenable because we rely upon districts in like Northeast Ohio to basically enter their scores and share data in these sheets, and there's not really doing it. And there's nobody that, forces us to do that. It's sort of just sharing information. So that's gotten trickier, but what I can tell you is that the performance index and in general, so the scores trend up from Layton to Harmon to high school, which is something that I've shared previously. Again, we take a holistic approach. We always talk about educating the whole child, not just optimizing on one standardized test. And, if you look up at our strategic vision, it does talk about Aurora learners being future ready, and it does not mention test ready. And I think it's important to know that that is something that we do, but we must focus, on our students, live the balance of the strategic vision and sort of nurturing the whole child in a holistic manner and not just focusing solely on optimizing on test scores. Certainly want to see very good test scores, and we have those, and we're going to continue to work on the areas where we need to work. So with that, I don't want to say too much more because this leads directly into the report card and all those different areas that Mr. Roberto is going to talk about. But is there any questions specifically about that before I pass it over to Mr. Roberto? And I can take them at the end.
It was
too.
very good, yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Go ahead, Mike.
Paul, if you don't
Yeah,
mind.
got it.
So for the third time in as many years that the revised state report card has been implemented, the Aurora City School District has earned the highest rating of 5 stars, as you can see up there, in each of the 5 categories from the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce. The 5 stars in all 5 categories means that the district significantly exceeded state expectations in each category. Aurora is one of only 6 districts out of over 600 school districts in the state of Ohio to earn this recognition each of the last 3 years. So I won't dive too deep into the report card because Paul has already talked about some of it, and then Mike Hayes is going to reference other areas, but I did want to provide an overview of each of the components. So Paul, if you don't mind. So the first category is achievement, and as you can see from this graphic, we continue to improve as a district. It's the one over to the far left there. This area is most closely aligned to the state test that Paul just shared with you. Our performance index score of 104.2 continues the upward trend since we returned from the COVID-19 pandemic 4 years ago, as he alluded to. In the area of progress, which is a measure of growth, the light gray areas represent courses that were not tested. So if you look in that graphic in the middle, and the dark gray areas represent courses where the district has significantly exceeded expectations. So as you can see, there's a lot of dark gray up on there. Green represents courses which we met and expected, and there are 2 red areas or courses where we are below expected growth. Now, this is something that we want to understand a little more, and so we'll dig into. As an example, one of the courses in red, American Government, we saw impressive growth, as you saw in Paul's in his report this year, and then Mike Hayes is actually going to go into that a little bit more as well. But even though we saw the expected growth, we said scores that showed we didn't see the expected growth that the state did from there. So again, something to look into. With gap closure, this measures how well we support minority groups such as English learners, students with disabilities, or economically disadvantaged students, as well as minority students in the areas of math and language arts. And I know this graphic is kind of hard to read, but in short, if we score above the little red dot that's up there, then we're exceeding expectations from the state. And you can see that is the case for each of the minority groups that are listed up there. We're also meeting and exceeding expectations in at least the last 2 categories, the graduation rates and the K-3 literacy that are shown up there in graphic form. In the K-3 literacy in particular, each of our 3rd graders met expectations for establishing a solid foundation in reading and writing in preparation for their advancement to the 4th grade. So the well-deserved congratulations does go out to all the ACSD staff for rating so high on the state report card, as this is a measure of the district as a whole. This is also a natural byproduct of the good work taking place in the ACSD classrooms, thanks to each staff member and including our administrative team, focusing on the district's strategic vision, as Paul mentioned, and by nurturing the roots of young people each and every day. So that whole child approach continues to have the natural byproduct of having these high ratings on our report cards. Questions in relation to the report card? All right, and then from that point then, I'm going to pass it over to Mike to talk a little bit about the goals, as Paul mentioned, for the high school. This will be the first of several reports that we'll have the first semester on reporting in on building goals, and then the second semester we will report on how those goals are going. So Mike?
All right, thank you, Mr. Roberto, Mrs. Mahalis, as well as the rest of the Board of Education for allowing me the opportunity to shine light on the primary focus areas for Aurora High School as we navigate the 24-25 school year. So plain and simple, our goal for Aurora High School is to optimize student growth and achievement for every single learner inside the greenhouse and in all facets of our organization. Now that said, to do that, we're thinking about the idea of living, learning, and leading with heart. So, you saw in Paul's previous slides, there are some metrics. When you score a 98% in the 23 school year, it's very hard to really go up from that. So you have a decrease 1 year and stuff like that. So we really just want to continue to focus on optimizing that growth. And that's why we're focusing on that mantra or that ethos of living, learning, and leading with heart. And we'll get to some of the specifics of what we're actually meaning by that with our staff members in a little bit. But in order to understand where we're going, I think it's important to understand where we've been. And so I want to call attention to some of the data points up here on this slide. So when we see 977 on here, these are not in your packets, this is just overarching data to talk about. Those in your packets are more detailed than accounts. But 977 represents the number of AP exams given at Aurora High School last school year, which was the most in school history. Then we have 855, the number of AP exams that were passed at Aurora High School last year or in May of 2024. Once again, the most in school history, equating to an approximately 90% passage rate. Now, to give you context, 15 years ago in 2009, Aurora High School gave approximately 300 AP exams with a 70% passage rate. And so what these numbers speak to is equity and access in action. It means that our students are striving to achieve, and that our staff, combined with the partnership of our families, are helping them reach their goals. And as Mrs. Mahalis alluded to in our last board meeting, she said, our students are reaching for the stars, and our staff members, our families, our community are helping them grab those and achieve, again, at the highest of levels. That 199 number represents the number of nationally recognized AP scholars. Those are the number of students that have taken multiple AP exams, passing them all at an incredibly high level. The 97 up there represents, as Dr. Milsatich alluded to, and Mr. Roberto as well, the percentage of students who pass the government end-of-course exam that all juniors have to take their junior year in order to graduate from high school. And I call attention to that because, one, that's for every student. This is not AP students. This is every student under the sun, whether they're on an IEP, 504, every single student in this building. And historically speaking, Aurora High School has had a percentage passage rate in the low to mid 80s year after year. And our staff committed themselves, believed, and put things into action to help our kids achieve and grow at the highest of levels. They believed our kids could do it, and then it took some time. We had to take several years to get the right people in place, the right practices in place, revamping curriculum, revamping instructional methodologies to get or to garner the types of results that we saw within this past school year. And again, it starts with belief, it starts with living, learning, leading with heart, embracing the values of our strategic vision, and putting that action into place. And then the last number up there, 105.3, represents the Performance Index score for Aurora High School, or the PI score. And the PI score measures achievement at Aurora High School for all learners across all state-required end-of-course exams. 105.3 is the highest performance index score in Aurora High School history, and that's a byproduct of this past school year. So again, these are all great outcomes, but again, those are outcomes based on valuing the roots of our strategic vision. And I want to call your attention to the numbers below there. So thinking of our strategic vision, the class of 2024 were the first cohort of students to go through all 4 years of their high school experience with the roots of the strategic vision: critical thinking, collaboration, balance, empathy, innovation, and resilience at the forefront of their educational journey. And so we had 219 graduates last year. We surveyed them all. We got 144 responses, and of that survey, we gave students a Likert-like scale, 1 through 5, to evaluate how well they thought the roots of our strategic vision were cultivated or fostered or nourished within them throughout their high school career. And out of those 144 responses, 94% of students indicated a 4 or 5 for critical thinking or collaboration, which means they felt it was either well-developed or extremely well-developed. Again, this is just us thinking about, hey, what really matters? And it's how we know that our kids are going out there to be future ready. We also gave the students the opportunity to provide open-ended responses so that we could get some context behind how they felt about those responses, which was great. The 92% represents students who scored a 4 or 5, meaning resilience was either well-developed or extremely well-developed within them during their high school career. And then that 70 number represents kind of a merging between empathy, innovation, and balance being scored at a 4 or 5 level on the Likert-like scale. Now, I can tell you probably the majority of the remaining 30% were at we felt like it was developed area, which was a 3, basically like it was adequate. And I didn't want to skew any data there because I felt like that was an area where we could continue to grow. And it's not to say that we're not providing opportunities for our students to develop their sense of innovation or empathy, but how can we help our students understand that those kind of values are being instilled within them? How can they have self-awareness that the experiences that they're going through are helping them develop as empathetic learners or as innovative thinkers, that sort of thing. And so that kind of leads us into our next phase. And what we're looking to do when we talk about living, learning, and leading with heart, we're kind of looking at the idea of how can we take a metacognitive approach to examine the heart health of our organization. And so when we think about the heart of a human being, we have to think about the internal and external factors that are impacting one's ability to live with a sense of vitality. And so just like in life, you might have certain factors that are impacting you as you age, where maybe you have to change your diet, you might have to change your exercise routine. And maybe what you were doing in the past always worked, but because of where you are in life, those things need to adjust. It's the same thing in the classroom. We've had great results for years and tremendous results, especially recently, but it doesn't mean that we can stand in our laurels and just operate the same way. We have to be cognizant of the factors that are impacting us as educators, as well as the societal factors that are impacting the livelihood of our students. So what we've done is our instructional leadership team this year has developed kind of a roadmap, if you will, and this is in your packets. But we've looked at 6 kind of areas to examine from a metacognitive perspective that kind of cover every aspect of our work as educators. Everything from how we're designing assignments, homework, and assessments, to how we're working on our instructional or pedagogical approaches, how we're communicating with students, staff, stakeholders, how we're celebrating our students, how we're valuing extracurricular undertakings, how we're implementing the supports, structures, operational systems in place that we have, and how we can make them better. And so what we're doing is at 6 points throughout the year, currently we're in point 1 or phase 1, we're having all staff members complete a 12-question survey or form that analyzes that domain of their work in the organization in alignment with the roots of our strategic vision. That gives that metacognitive approach. They get to understand what's going well for them, and then also areas where there might be some gaps, some areas that they can work on. Just like in the classroom, every student maybe needs something a little bit different. Hey, what maybe a science teacher needs to work on in biology might be a little bit different than what a social studies teacher needs to work on in world history. So they're getting that aspect to think again, metacognitively, self-reflecting. Then they're going to take time with their departments to come together, collaborate, understand what's going on from a PLC departmental perspective, where our department leaders or instructional leadership team will be able to synthesize trends or patterns that they're seeing within all individuals. And then they're going to be able to take that work and go at a staff level and look at things from an interdisciplinary perspective. That way, then, they're able to see, okay, hey, in environmental science, they're focusing on this aspect. Over in Spanish, in global language classes, they have these kind of patterns or trends. These are the things that we're working on. So we can have that kind of sense of awareness and being also, good, positive collaborators and helping each other continue to push us forward. And our goal with this is to collect feedback or data from all staff members and students alike to kind of start looking at our vision for the future. So again, like I said, we have to be cognizant of the factors that are impacting us internally and externally, and those same factors that are impacting our students. Just like we look at fiscal forecasting to examine what's going on currently, what happened in the past, and how we can predict what we need to do to operate in a fiscally sound manner for the future, we have to do the same thing in our classroom practices. And to give you kind of an example, when we were developing the roots of the strategic vision in 2019 and 2020, one of those roots, collaboration, we probably weren't thinking about generative AI being a collaborative tool that was being used in the classroom. But in 2024, and looking into the second half of the decade, generative AI is a tool that can be used, and we can have pros and cons with it as a collaborative tool. But if we're not taking the intentional time to examine how those things are impacting our practices and impacting the livelihood of our kids, we're not going to be as heart healthy or have a greenhouse filled with as much vitality as possible. So we're going to be looking at then, hey, by the end of the year, how can we take all this data that we're collecting, have focus areas for the second half of the decade to make sure that we're embracing and carrying out and effectively upholding the roots of our strategic vision with as much fidelity as possible so that we can continue to optimize student growth and achievement at the highest of levels. And then, so basically, it's a long journey, but again, we've put a lot of structures in place, multifaceted, so that we can get our staff members continuing to analyze their craft, reflect and refine their work in a way that works for them, that's also in alignment with our strategic vision, so again, that we can help our learners be completely future ready. So with that, I appreciate the time and energy, the focus with all this, so I appreciate all the time examining the materials we've provided. Open it up if you have any questions or comments, and as always, go green.
When did this come about, the Live, Learn, and Lead with Heart? Was it just this school year?
Yeah, I try to put in, put out a mantra every school year, so we've had awe and wonder one year, we've had believe, we've had dream, and then this year heart is kind of the focus. And so I actually already have the focus for next year. It's cultivate, but I'll keep that a secret. It'll kind of depend on how some things go out there, but it has to do with moments. But anyway. Yeah.
What year did you say there were 300 AP tests taken? I missed the year.
2009, so 15 years ago, we had approximately 300 students taking AP exams. So just in 15 years, and again, if we were to say, that's kind of my focus is this, it can't just be, hey, we've got to shoot for a 2% increase this year. It's optimal growth for every single kid, and it's the tactical approaches that we have to take on an individualized or PLC-based or department-based level in order to garner long-term and steady growth.
All right, well, thank you. Any other questions? Thank you for that.
Yep, no, thank you.
All right, so does that conclude your reports? All right, and so we will move on to Mr. Volleson and the treasurer's report.
Thank you, Mrs. Mahalis. This evening, I have 3 resolutions for your consideration, and I'll start with the financial report for the month of August. And in August, our revenues exceeded expenditures by nearly $5.3 million. This increases our general fund cash balance to about $24.2 million 2 months into the fiscal year. Revenues are about 10% greater than projected. As you remember, our advances were a little lower last month, so kind of expected our revenues to be up this month. Expenditures were about 2.6% greater than projected. The big thing on the revenue side, we received our second half 2023 real estate property tax settlement from Portage County, along with the public utility tangible personal property tax receipts from Portage. So we'll be expecting our Summit County tax receipts in September, which will complete our tax collections for the calendar year and obviously the first half of the fiscal year. Another thing on the revenue side, we did get our casino revenue. We get that twice a year, August and January. And in August, we received $99,132, a little lower than last August, which we received $101,148. So gambling's kind of running pretty steady in the state of Ohio. On the expenditure side, in the employee retirement benefits area, we paid our SES surcharge. This year was $97,216, a little up from last year's of $94,166. And again, this comes up every year, and it's an additional employer charge levied on the salaries of lower paid SERS members used exclusively to fund their health care when they retire. And for fiscal year 24, it was based upon those employees making $30,000 or less. Surcharges would have to be paid for them. So this encompasses a lot of our classified folks, bus drivers, food service, paras, some para-educators, some yes, some no. So a good number of these people are making under $30,000 a year, and that's how we end up having to pay the surcharge for them. 2 other areas in the purchase services, we paid $135,543 to Spark, and this is for all the different services we have through them, from internet to our fiscal accounting to our student accounting, student financial computer system information. So, and then also $187,491 to Dell Financial Services on Chromebook leases. So it's a little higher than normal because we have the 3rd year of one of the leases was paid this year. First 2 were paid through ESSER funds, and ESSER funds are gone. So we had one. The last year of that were for coming out of general fund, and then also the new Chromebooks that we just purchased for this school year are in that particular charge. So thus far for the fiscal year, revenues are about $55,000 less than projected, so we're running pretty much to schedule. Expenditures about $172,000 greater, so right now we have an unfavorable variance about $227,000 2 months into the fiscal year, but we had a lot of extra charges, especially in purchase services in the month of September. Some of those typically, like surcharge, we paid in October before, so or in August, we paid in September rather than August before. So we should see things kind of come together a little better here in the next month or 2.
Okay. All right, thank you. Exhibit D1 is a resolution to approve financial statements and reports. May I have a motion, please?
Moved. Second.
Are there any comments or questions for Mr. Volleson? All right, then please call the roll.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes.
Mr. Akam?
Yes.
Mrs. Schneider?
Yes.
Mrs. Click?
Yes.
Mr. Cebulski?
Yes.
Okay, the second exhibit D2, we have 2 then and now statements for we had invoices for purchase orders weren't encumbered before we received the invoice. One is for the blue ink That's the kind of our document signing thing that is used through personnel. And the other is through New Motion United Seton Mobility, and this is for a wheelchair type for special education students at the high school.
Okay, that blue ink, oh, well, first I'll get a motion, please.
Move.
Can you get a
Second.
All right, the blue ink, the $6,000, do we do that is that an annual?
That would be an annual
cost?
fee for the system.
Is it a new system?
We started it last year, and on there is teacher contracts, other different things that are done, pretty much all the time between teacher contracts, all contracts for employees. That's kind of the big area that's covered under it, from supplementals to the substitutes to the regular teachers, so on and so
That's how I
forth.
sign all the contracts.
Right.
I don't think it's all that easy, to be honest, but
Yes,
it's fine. I'll keep
sometimes it
doing
works
that.
quicker than others, yes.
Yeah. I guess it saves on paper. All right, any other comments or questions? Mr. Volleson, please call the roll.
Mrs. Schneider?
Yes.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes.
Mr. Cebulski?
Yes.
Mr. Akam?
Yes.
Mrs. Click?
Yes.
Okay, and the last is Exhibit D3, and this is a resolution. We're amending and restating both our 403B and 457 plans, which are tax sheltered annuities, which are open to all employees. And we're also going to approve US Omni and TSACG as the third-party administrator. In 2000, I believe in 2009, actually, the IRS changed all the different regulations regarding the 403B plans. And in reality, what they changed for is because people were taking advantage of the plans, taking money out when they shouldn't be, without getting penalties and whatnot. So the IRS put in stringent regulations on how they have to be handled by school districts, municipalities, cities, so on, any kind of government organization. 403B is pretty much the same as a 401k in the private sector. 457B is another plan that is available to the governmental entities. So by using a third-party administrator, which will be at no cost to both the district nor the employees, they'll make sure that we stay in compliance with all the IRS regulations, and things will kind of run through them. Also, also through my office, we still have to take the deductions, and the money will be forwarded through them and then deposited into the various accounts through the different providers. Omni is pretty much used by the majority of school districts in the state of Ohio. Most of the districts have gone to a third-party administrator. We're one of the few that are currently not. I've been doing it myself for the last, 15 years, or however long that is, from 2009. And I think as we move forward, most likely the person sitting in this chair next year, it'll be something they'll want to move to anyway. Omni is used by, again, most of the people around us. Solon uses them, Hudson uses them. So the districts around us do use them, and I've talked with the different folks there, and it's pretty much been a seamless operation in doing that. Again, no cost to the district, to the employees. It'll just kind of make it a little more efficient and make sure we're always in compliance with IRS regulations. And I believe I sent you an email, the plans, which are kind of lengthy, and what can be done and can't be done. And again, it's all tied to IRS.
So you're setting us up for your impending absence, right?
Yes, pretty
Can I have
much.
a motion, please?
So moved.
Chair seconds. Are there any comments or questions? Mr. Volleson, please call the roll.
Mrs. Schneider?
Yes.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes.
Mr. Akam?
Yes.
Mrs. Click?
Yes.
Mr. Cebulski?
Yes.
That concludes my report.
Okay, thank you for that. Moving on to new business, we have Exhibit E1A, which is a resolution to accept gifts and contributions. May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
All right, I will read through these. We have the Jaws Wrestling Club donated $6,000 to the wrestling program. Mr. and Mrs. Christopher Phillips donated $200 to the cross-country program. And Mr. and Mrs. John Macco donated $100 to the cross-country program. So we thank all those people who donated. Anything else? Mr. Volleson, please call the roll.
Mrs. Click?
Yes.
Mr. Akam?
Yes.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes.
Mrs. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Sobolski?
Yes.
Without objection, I'll take the 10 personnel resolutions together. And I'll read through them first, then I'll give a motion. Exhibit E1B1 is a resolution to accept resignations. Exhibit E1B2 is a resolution to approve the reclassification of licensed staff members. Exhibit E1B3 is a resolution to employ long-term substitute teachers for this school year. Exhibit E1B4 is a resolution to approve the introductory appointment of support staff. Exhibit E1B5 is a resolution to award supplemental pupil activity contracts to district personnel. Exhibit E1B6 is a resolution to employ licensed substitute teachers for this school year. Exhibit E1B7 is a resolution to employ support staff substitutes for this school year. Exhibit E1B8 is a resolution to award supplemental pupil activity contracts to non-district personnel. Exhibit E1B9 is a resolution to adjust the employment percentage of a licensed staff member. And exhibit E1B10 is a resolution to approve a leave of absence, requests. May I have a motion?
Moved.
Second.
Are there any questions about those 10 resolutions? Mr. Wallace, please call the roll.
Mrs. Schneider?
Yes.
Mrs. Mahalis?
Yes.
Mr. Akam?
Yes.
Mrs. Click?
Yes.
Mr. Sobolski?
Yes.
Exhibit E1C is a resolution to recognize former board president Jerry Kohansky. I'm going to read through it. The Aurora Board of Education would like to honor and recognize Jerry's dedication, accomplishments, and many years of service to the Aurora City Schools and community. Jerry was a resident of Aurora for over 36 years and served on the Aurora School Board for 24 years, with 22 of those years serving as board president. Jerry championed the students of Aurora and supported them in a variety of ways, including with his attendance at the student presidential debates, which are held in the government class at Aurora High School. He was a strong proponent of that exercise, and he believes strongly that it was a great way to get students involved in current events and to develop their critical thinking skills. He attended them regularly every 4 years as they coincided with the national presidential debates. So, we, the Aurora City Schools Board of Education, do hereby declare that from this date forward, the Aurora High School government class students' presidential debates shall officially be recognized as the Jerry Kohansky Student Presidential Debates. May I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Any comments or questions?
Mrs. Click?
Yes.
Mr. Sobolski?
Yes.
Mrs. Mahalis? Mr. Akam?
Yes.
Mrs. Schneider?
Yes.
I will say that Mr. Rubin is very appreciative of your support of this program, and in particular that change, because that was something that was real important to him.
He was always very appreciative that you were paying. Okay, exhibit E1D is a resolution to approve out-of-state and overnight field trips, or field trips. That was our orchestra field trip to the Bahamas. May I have a motion?
Moved.
Chair seconds. Are there comments or questions? Let's give a chance to review everything else. Mr. Johnson, please call the roll.
Mr. Sobolski?
Yes.
Mrs. Click?
Yes.
Mr. Akam?
Yes.
Mrs. Schneider?
Yes.
Mrs. Mahalis?
So that'll be approved with the excursions. I'll let Mr. Burdette know. He'll be very happy.
Providing all those information. All right, then we have a discussion item, which I think you said that.
Yes. Paul, do you
Sure.
mind elaborating?
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah, if you remember last year when Shannon Gagel was still our gifted coordinator, we updated our gifted policy and regulation. One thing we did not do was specifically update our acceleration policy. So I wanted to bring this forward. It's really not much different. I mean, it's still based on the model policy from the state. However, we're, in addition to the board looking at this policy, we're also looking to firm up our acceleration guidelines, which we have done, and sort of put those into practice. And so I've been working with Becky Quinn, our new gifted coordinator, with principals and staff members and teams on that. And actually, we're going to be going and visiting Harmon and Layton, because this mostly impacts the students and the staff there, to talk about those guidelines. But wanted to just bring this forward to get this potentially approved by the board, since we were updating all of those. Mhm. Yes.
So Mr. Justin Bowe put this in. This is just a quick background. You can kind of see for yourself there. But in general, it's an opportunity for the students to literally get hands-on learning through the American Sign Language program, where they'll be visiting a university that is centered around that. He lists the connections to the ASL program with there. And I will mention that they will be leaving on a Sunday. Monday is a professional day for staff, so the students would not be in school anyway. And then they'll be coming home Tuesday, so they'll miss a total of one school day for this trip. And so it will be it's a voluntary for anyone taking his ASL courses. But it is a good opportunity, and I will say Justin has done a great job of growing that ASL program. When he first started here, he was here at halftime. He split with another school district, and because of the demand of these courses, he has gotten this to where he's full-time here in Aurora.
Italians believe that when somebody dies and they remember you or something happens, they leave down. I'm nuts, but that's the way. I'm nuts, so Mike, this is the truth. Mike gave me the thing, he said, "Look at this," and went back to my desk. There was a dime. So whether he said it or not, if he did, he's saying thank you. Yeah. And I told Mike.
Yes, it's an awesome story.
Jerry's dropping dimes all over the place.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, it's October. I'll get the exact dates to everybody.
So moved.
Second?
Mrs. Mahalis? Mrs. Schneider?
Yes.
Mr. Cebulski? Mrs. Click?
Yes.
Mr. Akin?
Yes.